You're listening to the RE Social Podcast with your hosts, Andrew and Vince from OnV Invest. For more information, go to onvinvest.com.
What's up, you guys? Welcome to another episode of RE Social Podcast. Today, I have one of my favorites, the legend, Clint Coons. What's up, man?
Hey, thanks for having me.
For anybody who hasn't switched on YouTube in the last 10 years and don't know who you are, can you give us a 90-second intro?
Yeah, so I'm an attorney and one of the founders of Anderson Business Advisors. Beyond being just an attorney, I also consider myself to be a real estate investor. My partner and I created a firm to help real estate investors, reduce their taxes and also protect their investments. And what we found through our own investing and building a portfolio to nearly 300 properties is that if you set up entities the right way, it can definitely help you get more deals done, especially when you're considering working with lenders. So our practice is devoted primarily to helping small business owners and real estate investors utilize the same techniques he and I have in growing our own portfolio. And to that end, our firm has grown from 15 employees back in 99, now close to 500 employees here in 2023.
Wow, that's awesome, man. For people who don't know, there's only like a couple of people online who's actually popular and give us tips on how to create LLCs and stuff. Mark's one and you are the other. And I actually happened to come to one of your events a few years back with Drew. It was like life-changing for us to see like the things that you guys were explaining and the LLCs and stuff. Unfortunately, we were morons back then and we had like, I don't know, one house or something. So it didn't quite make sense for me to do the stuff that you guys offer. But I wish I actually didn't come that early on and I came a little bit later, because it would have made so much more sense to actually set it up with you guys. But I do most of the things that you talk about. Do you see that a lot with clients? Like they come a little bit too late or too early?
Yeah, you get it all over the place. There's always ways we can help people fix things and, structure them. I always tell individuals, hey, if you're just starting out, lay the foundation. If you kind of have an idea, a sense of where you're going, you should at least get an entity set up from the standpoint that you never know when an opportunity is going to come along. And you have to ask yourself, are you ready to take action when you see that opportunity? And a lot of investors, in my own experience, that's when they say, oh, I need to set something up. And, it can be too late because maybe it's a quick close on that deal and we can't get an entity set up for you. So I like to have an entity there, make my offers in it. And then that gives me some flexibility to decide what I want to do. Maybe not closing that entity, maybe closing something else. Maybe I wholesale it, but asset protection, I think, is key. And then depending on how you set it up, maybe there's some tax planning that can come with it as well.
Yeah, that's really good, man. I mean, we have a holding company in Wyoming and we have different LLCs in different states, kind of like how you talk about. So before we get into the details of like some questions I was going to ask you, now people are listening and they say, hey, I have one house. And do I need to have 50 LLCs? That's usually the people, they ask me and I usually say, well, what is it worth? And they say, well, I make $10,000 a year in my house. I have 99%, loan on it. I'm like, oh yeah, you don't need anything. You're worth nothing. So how do you advise people who are listening in to be like, when is a good time to start? What do I need just to get started? Because most people who are listening, they have a couple of units, couple of doors.
But, someone who sets up LLCs, I think you said 50 properties, you need to lead 51 limited liability companies then to protect all those, right?
Yeah. Yeah, one holding company and 50 separate LLCs, right? Makes sense.
Exactly. You got it. So this is when I first 15 years ago, and I used to always teach this up until about that time, that you'd group properties based upon equity value. So if you're investing for cash flow, holding things longer term, I would look at the equity in the property and tell people, well, group, up to 5 properties per LLC, no more than $500,000 in equity. And that was predicated on the belief that, we're just trying to minimize your overall risk of loss. So if you said 50 properties, maybe you might, actually, that's kind of a bad example because it's going to change what I'm about to tell you. But when you're starting out, 10 properties, I see a lot of investors make the same mistake that they tend to group their properties into one or two LLCs and think if I have insurance, I'm going to be protected. And they don't understand the purpose for the investment. So all my rental real estate that I'm holding long term, I'm not buying for equity. I can't eat that equity. I buy for cash flow. And so what I want to protect is the cash flow that's coming in from those properties. So I'm going to use more protection with those investments. And I go so far now to tell people, listen, put one property per LLC until you get to about 12 to 15 properties. And so in your example, you have 50, then you can start grouping because you can afford to take on more risk. Because the real estate investors, I've run into these people, 23 years of doing this, you meet a lot of investors and they will tell me stories where they grouped properties into one LLC and they had maybe 10 properties sitting there and then they get wiped out. One lawsuit takes it all away from them. And so the equity may not have been huge, but the income is what they came to rely upon. And it changes their retirement plans. It changes how they're sending their kids to school. Maybe another spouse has to go back to work. So I really think that when you have a smaller portfolio, go all in on the protection because it means so much in value to you. Now you get to my place, now I have no problem. I'll put 10, 15 properties in one LLC because if something did happen and I lose 10, I have close to 300. It's not going to change the wine that you see over my shoulder, whatever I choose to drink when I go out to a restaurant. I'll still order the $200 bottle of wine and not think anything of it because it doesn't have the same impact. Whereas when you're first starting out, you got 5, you lose 5, that's hard to recover from.
Do you have any? No, love it. Smart. Just taking it in. Okay, cool. So let's, I like to, dig into some of the details of how you set up things. People usually ask, they live in California and they say, hey, I got 2 LLCs in Wyoming. We have 2 LLCs in Wyoming, but leave me out of this, Clint. But now, do I just set it up in Wyoming, but do you want LLCs in California? How does that work?
We get that question all the time. Sit down with someone who lives in California, and it's complex because a lot of people who live there, they're tired of paying taxes. California takes over 50% of what you make, and then they want to bill you for the rest that they haven't taken yet, and they do it through little, your LLC, you set up an LLC in Texas. Well, you got to pay us $800 because it's doing business in California. And you're thinking, it owns property in Texas. It's got a rental property there. How's it doing business in California? Well, because you live here, so it's doing business here. Mm-hmm. And I'm sensitive to that. And I understand where people are coming from, especially if you invest in a place, like I do in Winston-Salem. I have a lot of investments there in Indianapolis. And those properties generate on average $600 a month to $800. And so $800 is 1 month's worth of rent. And so if you're setting up multiple LLCs in North Carolina and you live in California, you're thinking, well, I'm losing 1 month of rent every LLC is set up. So for that, what we like to do is set up a statutory trust. And we have our California clients typically own a Wyoming statutory trust, and then that statutory trust will own LLCs. And the purpose there is to work around the franchise tax. So we can avoid the franchise tax in California by using a blocker entity, a Wyoming statutory trust, as opposed to using a Wyoming holding limited liability company. And so that's an aspect. If you're living in California, we're looking at assets that are held outside the state. Then you want to look in the state and you say, all right, well, what are we doing here? Now, that same client may tell me, I don't want to pay $800 on an entity in California. All right, well, then we'll continue using statutory trusts. The way we set them up, they're not subject to that $800 franchise tax. But there's always a give and take. And I'll sit with a California client who's asking me this, and they're saying, I don't want to pay $800. And I'm looking at their property, and it's bringing in $32,000 a year. And, part of me would say, are you that freaking cheap? You're not going to pay $800 when you're making 32 grand. And I have to then explain to them that, yeah, I can save you the $800. But on the backside of that is, how complex are you going to make it for yourself? Because when we set up statutory trusts, although they provide asset protection like an LLC and they're not subject to the $800, it can be difficult sometimes to get a bank account open for those. Because when you're now dealing with Chase or Wells Fargo, they're not familiar with it. And I've been on multiple calls with my clients, business banker, explaining this is just a business trust. A business trust. And they'll say, we don't set up trust accounts. I'm like, you do. I have one with you. I know you do.
We've run into
It's just
that
they haven't
problem
been
as
familiar.
well.
You
Yeah, a
run
lot of
into
these
that.
guys don't have the education that they should. Yeah.
Yeah. So then how, it complicates it. So with
Yeah.
Californians, I tell them, for the most part, if you have property in California, I know it cash flows well. Set up an LLC for it and don't try to get complex. But when you go outside the state, that's where I think we need to use a Wyoming statutory trust as a blocker entity, because those outside investments, they probably aren't cash flowing like the California property. So there, it wouldn't make sense to pay $800 on 10 LLCs, or maybe you set up a series LLC in Texas and it has 45 cells. I just did that for a client. That one was actually in Oklahoma. If California could, they would hit every cell with $800, 45 cells in a series LLC. So you just got to take it this approach, understanding it's not a one size fits all. That's what I keep telling.
Yeah, that simplicity is something that I'm starting to learn, that's something I value for sure. I'd be gladly paying the $800 just to not have to think about the extra layers of complexity for setting up that statutory trust. I'm sure there's fees involved in that as well, though. So is that a wash at one point, or how does that work out?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it just depends, right? If it's just for one property, oftentimes it's going to be a wash because you're using a statutory trust, plus you have to set up another LLC to be your trustee, to give yourself anonymity. So I don't think it makes sense. And I was just talking to one of my strategists this morning, and he was talking about a California client, and he was discussing that. And this is what I came down to. I said, man, just keep it simple for the guy. Just tell him, don't worry about it. Just pay your $800, set up a holding LLC. I know it's an extra $800. You're going to get much more protection from where you're at. And don't try to overcomplicate it, because he wanted to take all of his LLCs and turn them into statutory trusts. And that, deeds and all of that, when you add all that up, are you really saving that much?
Right.
I don't think so.
And there's no higher level of anonymity of it's interesting. Wow. Yeah, man. So it's just interesting how different structures work. So, going back to some of, us and some of our friends, we live in California. We have LLCs in Tennessee, but, after I talked with you at the Kathy's event, I haven't put anything inside it because it was getting too complicated for me to do. Like, what do you suggest there? You were saying that Tennessee is a different game, right?
Well, Tennessee, yeah, it's a different game there. So, because you have to worry about a franchise tax in Tennessee. And so the way I work around that many times is we'll use a Tennessee series LLC and then set it up so each of the cells are owned by the client individually. Because in Tennessee, they'll hit you on the value of the assets. You get hit with this franchise tax. So if you're putting multiple properties into LLCs and they're not owned by the family members, meaning if it's my LLC, it's owned by me and my wife. And if instead I'm trying to use an anonymity structure where I set up Tennessee LLCs and they're owned by a Wyoming LLC, you can be paying some hefty fees to Tennessee on an annual basis, because there's an exemption. It's referred to as FONTS, family-owned non-corporate entity. And so you need to understand how that works in Tennessee so you can structure your Tennessee investment so you obtain asset protection, but you just don't blow up the taxes on it. There was a guy I met came on board with us. He lives in Florida and he had a bunch of Tennessee investments, and I looked at his tax return and I saw that he's paying $45,000 in franchise taxes in Tennessee. And I looked at it, I knew right away what he was doing wrong. His CPA had set up this multi-tiered structure and was not aware of the exemption that he could have applied for to not have to pay those taxes. So we restructured everything. We got him out of paying that going forwards. But those are the mistakes that people oftentimes make if they're not from that area, that they don't realize is that what works in Texas, I'm not using that same strategy in Tennessee because it's unique, or Pennsylvania is even more different, or Florida is going to be different. So it's understanding where the investment's taking place and then designing the structure to fit that locale.
So you said create a series LLC in Tennessee,
and
then it cannot be owned by our Wyoming LLC?
Well, no. Okay. So here's what we do.
Okay.
If your Wyoming LLC, own your Tennessee limited liability company. So it owns the series LLC. That's going to give you the anonymity. So if you set up Funky Town LLC in Tennessee, it points to Wyoming, which doesn't point anywhere because they don't collect any information on you.
Yeah.
Well, the individual cells that you create in a series LLC to own your property, those cells they're not recorded anywhere. So since they're not recorded or filed anywhere, people don't know who's involved with them. And so when I set up a cell off of that parent name, the cell is going to say Funky Town Series 1 LLC or Protected Series Limited Liability Company. And that will hold title to your property. So if somebody looked up Funky Town, they're going to see the parent as points to Wyoming. So the benefit in doing it this way is that each of the cells qualify for the fonts exemption since you own them. The parent doesn't, but that doesn't matter because the parent LLC doesn't own anything. That's where a lot of times people will say to me, well, Clint, you've got the parent owned by the Wyoming. So what? We don't put any assets in the parent. You own all the cells. And so your parent will never pay tax because it doesn't own anything. It's there just to hide or provide anonymity.
Okay, I got it. So how I've set it up is I have the Series LLC. Mm-hmm. The Series LLC is owned by our parent in Wyoming.
Mm-hmm.
So now all I have to do is make sure that the baby LLCs inside the series owns the individual properties and not the main parent LLC. Is that accurate?
Correct. And those little babies, which are called cells, are owned by you individually.
But then, I'll lose the anonymity, right?
No, you don't, because they're not filed anywhere. The only way you would lose your anonymity is if you recorded that document, but it's not recorded anywhere.
Okay. So then I have to tell my guy, Mark, to tell him to make sure that I own the cells and not the parent LLC owns the cells, right?
Well, I don't know why you would be telling Mark that. He should be telling you that.
Hey, Mark, you better be listening.
Checkmate.
Checkmate. Mark's done. Nice,
no,
man.
He's a good guy. I like Mark. Yeah, he provides great information.
Yeah, he's cool, man. I mean, at that point, it made more sense to work with. I think Lee Chen is our lawyer. You probably know him too. He's so for people who already have stuff like like ourselves or legal doom, like you say, they set it up over there, and they don't want to do like the full package that you have, which is could be tens of thousands of dollars. Now, do you still work with them to kind of talk to them and maybe set up one entity? How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, what we do is we set up what the client needs. So that's what we're going to evaluate. Where you're at, what's going to prove to be most beneficial to you. And then we design out the structure. And, a lot of times when we design out structures for people, they'll look at it and they go, wow, this seems like a lot. Well, it is, because what we're trying to do is create a roadmap to wealth for you, where you'll know when you hit certain phases in your investing, what you need to set up. So we're designing the whole thing out based upon a strategy session. And then we're saying, all right, we're only going to start with this piece today. You don't need all of this right now. But when you start doing these other types of making these other types of investments or running a certain type of business, then you ought to consider these other things we put on there. Because in my experience, a lot of people, if they don't have the map, they'll just start the activity and then fail to realize that had they had a consultation, they could have probably done a little different in a different way, and it would have saved them some money on taxes, provided better protection for them. So we like to throw all that out on a blueprint diagram form so they know what to work off of.
So you suggest before even getting started as a real estate investor or even small business owner to consult with you or a company like yours?
I do. And so here's what you need to be looking for when you go to a professional. First off, you need to ask them, tell them what you want to do. Let's say you want a house hack, right? And you're going to go talk to an attorney and you say, hey, can you help me engage in house hacking? If they tell you it's an illegal activity, all right, well, you got a problem there. Yeah. Because they don't even understand what you're doing. And then they're going to provide you advice and you're educating them on what they should be doing. So I think that's a problem. The second thing that you'll notice is that practitioners, people that you're working with, should be backing into the plan, right? Everyone starts at the front end. You need to start at the back end and ask them, what do you want to do with this? And perfect examples in active business. If you're starting a new business venture, often ask people, hey, how much is going to be your investment? What do you want to do with this business in 5 to 10 years? And so that's going to give me some sense of what recommendation I'm going to provide them. And I want to know what they're doing outside of their business. Because if you said to me that, hey, I'm starting a new business to be a logistics company of some sort, but at the same time, I want to invest in real estate. All right, well, that tells me a couple different things here. A, I don't want to see any losses flowing down to your 1040, because if you're using conventional loans, that's going to make it difficult to qualify So when you hear practitioners say this, everyone needs an S corporation, never use a C corporation. It kind of tells me that those guys don't invest themselves, because if you've ever worked with a lender, you know, when you're going through underwriting, they want to look up and down your S corporation. They look at those losses and they take away from your ability to borrow if you're running a business from a tax efficient manner. And so I think those are the mistakes that people can find themselves in, and they wonder, hey, why can't I get these loans? Why is it so difficult for me to borrow? Well, it could be what you're doing with your business and how you set it up, which is causing the problem. So that's why I like to back into the planning.
It sounds to me like you've really got a good system going in solving a major problem that we have had since our journey over 5 years ago, just developing as real estate investors, and that's finding the team. And that's why we're doing so well in Tennessee. We were just talking about that. It's really the team. It's the people. It's everything's people. And in our journey, we've constantly run into problems where, because Vince is just such a nerd and reading all the books and all the YouTubes, so he'll oftentimes be like doing circles around the CPA, around the lender, the guy trying to set up the entity. It's been, I wouldn't say frustrated, but it's been kind of like a bit of a surprise at how many people are, that's their job, and they don't really even know the ins and outs of maybe how to set up a structure, how to truly take advantage of some of the major tax loopholes as an investor, as a business owner. And it sounds like that's exactly what you guys, that's your whole company. You have these experts, high-level guys who analyze it, take you from the 10-year vision and reverse it out and set up everything in that way for them. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I mean, that's what the DNA of the company has become. And, a lot of it has been through my mistakes, my partners and I, the mistakes that we've made along the way in our journey. Because, when you start out and you practice, let's say out of California, and you work with people over the internet, how do you necessarily know what the problems are in a Florida or a Tennessee if you don't invest there, or you don't have a lot of people that are investing there? I mean, because my very first property is in Memphis, Tennessee. Years ago, did this no money down deal. And I put it in the LLCs way I was talking about. And then I started getting taxed on it. It's like, son of
That's all of us. We've all had that moment of like, wait a minute, I owe what? I
know. So there's like, man, I got to dig into this one. I dug in. It's like, I need a land trust. And so then I restructured everything with a land trust to fix the problem that I created for myself. And, those are the areas that, if you're not doing it many times, you just don't even see what goes on at that lower level.
Well, I'm sorry if I'm getting the semantics and stuff that is a bit not, I guess, super real estate-y, but how do you hire and find, enough team members of experts, these high-level guys, they have to be, and that are so versed in each of the 50 states? Is that what I'm hearing? It's the whole nation you guys cover?
So what really has helped with this more than anything is the fact that we have a very robust deed department. And so a lot of the nuances that you may not even be aware of come up when you're transferring title to real estate. And since we prepare deeds in 48 states, that's where we started picking up a lot of the issues, was just on the deed prep side, because you'd find out, this is going to be a taxable event, or you're talking to title. Well, when you do this, it'd be taxable. So that becomes institutional knowledge. And then you layer on top of that, when you say, where do you find people? You don't step into this business with that type of knowledge. You gain that type of knowledge when you start working in the business under the tutelage of individuals like myself, my partner, other senior level attorneys, and you just do it day in and day out. We're niche.
Yep.
We only do what we do. And so if you need a contract drafted because you want to enter into a 100-year land lease, I'm not the guy to do that. I can tell you how we should structure it from an asset protection standpoint. I want to set that up, but I'm not drafting the lease for you.
Got it. Love it. And in terms of your real estate journey, what exactly how has that been for you? So you said you started in Memphis, Tennessee. Yep. Love it. We're actually kind of looking towards that area a little bit, in the near future, because Tennessee's just been so good to us. But walk us through maybe, I don't know, Cliff Notes version of like, what's your journey been as an investor on that side of your?
Made a lot of mistakes at the very beginning, because I live in Washington State and I have a few properties here. I will not invest in this state. Just screwed up. And so
Blue state?
What's that? Blue state?
Sorry. Yes, the blue state.
It is so blue.
Yeah,
I know.
we live in California, so I was like just saying last night at our meetup, like, yo, I will live in Southern California to the day I die, but I'm going to put all my money in red states like Tennessee. So sorry to cut you off, but we get it.
No, you're right. I think our governor, he hears what Newsom does. He's like, oh, I can go bluer than that. And so he tries to one up.
I'll outblue you.
He's like, wait, you're paying rent? What a loser.
Oh.
Here's a document saying live in his house for free for 9 months.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the 9 months, cut a check to the tenant. That's happened to us
That
many
literally
times.
happened.
Oh, you just described the city of Tacoma.
Oh, really?
Can't evict anybody between
Make a note,
September and
don't
April.
invest in Tacoma.
Yeah.
Got it.
There used to be this guy, one of a client here, he's a physician. He has 35 properties. I saw him this weekend down in Vegas. He always comes to the events and he said, Clint, it used to be I could give him $3,000 to get out. Now it's costing me $10,000 to get him out because they know they get to live there for that long.
Yeah. Tacoma, that's close to Seattle, right?
You're about 40 minutes away.
Yeah,
Yeah.
40 minutes.
It's not as bad as Seattle, but it's trying to compete. So so when I had to invest out of state. So I started investing first in Memphis, and I went to Indianapolis, and I learned then that going out there, boots on the ground is so important. As you said, building the team. So I had a crap team in Indy. The PM was stealing my rents. And I kept getting, emails, could never get him on the phone. And the reason why I couldn't, it was because his kids had taken over the business because he died and they were taking all the rents. I go to one of my properties and somebody answers the door. And I said, what the hell are you doing here? You're not even paying rent. And they said, no, we've been paying rent. And they showed me everything.
Wow.
And I found out this was going on. So I had to fire him. And properties, I was getting fined by the city for the condition of the property because he was allowing it to deteriorate. And so as I started building a portfolio in more different states, I started, coming to the conclusion, hey, certain types of properties I'm looking for, and building that team was the most important thing.
Yep.
And I got to the point where, you build your network and you start finding other individuals, you start associating with them. And I found that, the more properties you have with the PM, the better you're going to be treated because they want to fill yours before they fill the guy with one house. But you have to start somewhere. And then we started flipping real estate. In about 2011, started flipping in Vegas. And that went really well. But then the REO deal started drying up with the banks. And there's more competition from Californians finally figuring it out. You can make money there. They were coming in. And then we moved. Winston-Salem is where we have a pretty big operation. So I finally created my own PM company in Winston-Salem. We flip real investments there. And we buy and hold and we do mobile home parks and things like that. And honestly said that, having a geographic location and just, kind of going all in on that area and knowing that area, to me, is the better way to do it. We've pulled back and we've sold a lot of, ones and twos that you would have in different states, California being one of them. Got rid of that investment in Hawaii and these other things. And this went all in the strategies that we know that we really like. I mean, like take short-term rental, tried that for a while and realized I hated it. And so dumped short-term rentals. Yeah, quit doing those. Because it didn't fit with my lifestyle. That's the other thing too. Your investing needs to fit with your lifestyle and your passion. And
that's precisely what I'm experiencing right now. I was just telling Vince, like, I feel like I've been dying the death of like 1,000 tiny paper cuts. Because I've been managing, it was one thing to like just get a one Airbnb up. I had a great time setting it up. I did a lot of myself, built it, anyways, and it was great and it was fun and I didn't mind and then, second property in, even with some AI and hospitable and these automations and even a little bit of help, it was just a lot. And, we set up, now we got like 10, almost 12 Airbnbs and there's just always incoming messages. You're in the hotel business. Welcome. And I've just been overwhelmed. Just the other night, a guy called me at like around 11 o'clock a couple times and then was all in a huff and puff when I called him early the next morning because my phone was obviously on silent.
Yeah.
And he couldn't believe the neighbor was blasting their music. And I'm just like, I okay. Like, so what did it basically point is, and I'm laughing about it because it's just like, I'm not even surprised, but yeah, I totally get that. It's just a whole different entity. And I always tell everybody, if you're going to do the Airbnb, I get it. By the way, it's a little bit late in the game. Should have did it 5 years ago, but also know that you're going into a whole different business. It's hotel, it's people, and you're just going to be dealing with problems nonstop. So if that's okay for you, great, but build out that team, build out that system. And if you can have somebody at the front end taking on those calls, that's the way to go, because I was losing my mind. We have a virtual assistant now that's doing a great job, but we're working on, getting there more hours as we get more cash flow. So I get it, man. And a lot of what you're saying about your journey, we've had a lot of those parallels where we just had that, property manager that was barely a manager. Granted, not as bad as yours. I always love talking to investors like yourself, because I always feel like, oh, we had such a rough time. And then I hear your guys was actually stealing from you. And like, that's wild, man. And that's all part of the journey of being a real estate investor. I've never talked to a single investor who's just been like, yeah, it's just been all easy. Like, yeah, just a perfect team every time. And the realtor did the deal and no one stole from me. No one's ever said that. It's never been a clean journey. It's always like, oh God, here's the next fire, which is all part of it.
Even when we started in North Carolina, the guy we were using, I won't mention his name, he probably had 100 and some homes of mine in our portfolio, and he was stealing from me.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was just like, you got to be kidding me. And that's what made me set up my own PM there.
Yeah.
Was because of that. But going back to your Airbnb comment, VRBO.
Have you thought about investing in real estate and taking advantage of all of those benefits without any of the work? That is something that OnV Invest not only provides, but has been providing since its inception. With friends and family, we have built an empire in a system of a wealth generating tool that is giving us and our friends and family that leverage in their life to create true wealth. Go to onvinvest.com for more to see if you qualify. And thanks for listening.
Middle, low, or high-end properties. If you could redo your portfolio, what would you go in on? I'm just curious.
If you looked at the moves, the aggressive moves we were making in this moment today, in terms of the properties we're now like just listing and selling and purchasing.
Yeah.
I mean, we're selling a 1924 build, and we just closed on a 2023 build. So
makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's like when
drop mics.
He's like, makes sense. He has 300 units.
He's
like, yep, I agree. It's like when we started, we read all these books, Bigger Pockets, all of that stuff. It's like, oh yeah, value add. Buy a 1700, unit build, and then you replace the paint, and it's great. It's great for 2 days, and then the roof collapses, and then the floor is missing, and then the toilet doesn't work, and then you find out it's lead plumbing, and it's like, oh, okay. Well, I guess we have to lose $100,000 on this one to make $20 in cash flow, right? So
the capex is kill you.
Yeah, we're literally right now. We bought this one house. It's like half an acre in California. So it's like we're like, oh yeah, this is great. Oh, it's 1920s build and there's no pipes. So we're replacing the whole everything, and then there's still brown water. I'm like, I've changed the whole system. Like, where is this brown water coming from? They're like, well, it's coming from the inlet from the street to this, and it'll cost another $10,000. We're like, okay, so we're out of this game, So it's kind of like very interesting to see. You want to think more long term. In the beginning, I was thinking cash flow, $200 per door, 1% rule, all these things I learned. I found is like you said, Clint, like lifestyle based at this point in our lives, total trash. Like, I don't care about $200. You know what? I'll give you $200 to go away. Like, I don't want to talk to you at all. So we're moving our strategy from, taking all these properties, selling them, and going to like newer builds. So that's why we have to have like a good team of like lawyers, CPAs, all these different things that, I'm not able to keep up like this. There's no way I'll be able to keep up with what you learn like every day, Clint. Like, it's not possible. I'm trying to I'll tell my CPA, hey, can we make sure that this is all 7 days and less so I can take the active losses against my W-2? But I shouldn't have to do that, keep doing that, right? I would prefer if my CPA told me, hey, you have 9 days, so maybe you should do this. You can take away your $150,000 W-2 income. Now, I had a question. I know this is not very legal related, but since we were going on the route of investing from your portfolio, I wanted to ask you, what do you, I have, we have our own opinions, but I don't want to lead you to an answer. So from your experience of investing for, 20 plus years, what is your opinion on cash flow versus appreciation markets?
So if you're going to strictly go with cash flow, what I found is you got to find the right market where you have long-term tenants. Then the cash flow works. As long as your turn, the average tenant, the length of stay is 4 to 5 years, then I think it works. You don't need the appreciations because when they leave, that turn cost, you can then, you're still making money. But when you're in those markets where you're looking at a year or even 10 to 14 months and you have to turn them, if you're not getting the appreciation to offset your properties that are being turned over quicker, then you're losing money. And so I always want to find a balance. I will not go all in on just appreciation. I've already been down that road, and I didn't do it personally, but I saw a lot of people get hurt when the market corrected back in 2008, and they were filing bankruptcy. They were giving all their properties back because they didn't have enough cash flow to cover the debt. So I would stay away from that. But yeah, my opinion is that you just got to find the right balance and understand the market you're in. Just think Winston-Salem or Indianapolis. I don't get great appreciation there. Well, actually, the last couple of years it's been that way, but generally speaking, it's not huge. But the tenants that I have, especially in Winston-Salem, I mean, they're there 6, 10. I have some that are there 15 years, right? And they're happy. And you don't raise the rents a ton on them, but they don't ask for a lot. So,
Nice.
they take care of the property.
And that is a particular area that's managed by your management company.
Yeah.
Got it.
Managed by
That's
mine.
nice to have that control too. Yeah.
Did you see when you were in Memphis? I don't know if you're still there. Did you see overall more? Usually United States since World War II is about 4 or 5% if you calculate over the long period of time per year, and inflation is usually 2-3% over a long period of time. So do you see in some states, do you see a little bit more than 4 or 5%? Obviously, we're in California, we see way more than that. But how do you look into those numbers?
Well, so take my Memphis properties are gone. Sold them all in 2019 when I sold them. And in that market, I held those for almost 10 years. And they basically almost doubled in value.
Okay.
When I sold them. So that wasn't a bad deal.
Okay.
To do
nice
that.
Neighborhoods?
Well, yeah, right. See, that's the thing about Memphis. I mean,
Yeah.
you go across the street and you need a shotgun to get your rent, and you're over on this side, and everyone likes to pay, and it works really well. So that's one of those markets where I went out and boots on the ground, went to different areas. What's his name? Chris. Oh, Memphis Invest. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No.
Oh,
Just like a turnkey guy?
Yeah, he was. I don't think he does it so much anymore, but he was doing it back then. And I forget the guys I ended up going with. But Memphis back in 2007 and 6, it was huge. It was hot. There was a lot of deals going on down there, but you had to buy right because some neighborhoods were pretty sketch.
Do you still buy? I would think not, but I don't know. Do you still buy turnkey stuff from Kathy or Jason Hartman or any of those guys?
No. So what we tend to do is we find retiring landlords and we buy portfolios. So that's all I'm looking for. I don't want any
big fire sale style. Just give me the whole thing.
Well, that's a funny thing, right? So the acquisitions really become a little more difficult now in the last 2 years because, I find somebody that's 80 years old and they'll make them a cash offer on their portfolio of 18 properties, knowing that probably 3 of them are crap and they're not going to be worth anything. So you just go and evaluate it. And now what's happened is that those same landlords are telling me, no, I want what Zillow tells me my property's worth. Like, well, then fine, sell it on Zillow. I'm willing to give you cash in 15 days, with minimal inspection, no contingencies, so to speak. But if you want to waste, a year trying to liquidate this, go for it.
Yep. Nice.
Yeah.
That's the level, man. He's a whale.
Yeah,
the
dude.
definition
I
of
don't know.
a whale.
I just don't want to buy stupid.
Yeah. No, that's great.
That's smart. Hey, another question I had, I've been taking some notes, was you have a lot of properties. It sounds like to me, almost most of them are 1 to 4 units. Any reason that you didn't go to multis, or do you prefer the single family route?
That was our preference. And then we started getting into multifamily 3 years ago. We made a couple acquisitions, and one of them, the larger one, is I think it's 140 units. Right now it's just kicking my ass.
Where's it at?
Water. We didn't do the proper due diligence. The person that we had that was working with us that was supposed to do that kind of scammed us, and it's my fault, right? I relied upon someone on the acquisition side, and I shouldn't have done that. I should have done my own, but we've stabilized it. Okay, so I'll just say that. But it's been a lot more CapEx on this property than I'd budgeted for, and the pandemic really hit it hard because a lot of the people there, they're governmental assistants and trying to get the money, and there's always some excuse.
How much would you say you've lost on that property so far?
Oh God. So probably on a monthly basis for at least a year and a half, I was 20,000 to 30,000 negative.
Damn.
I know.
Yep. That's all. And I just asked that question for us to feel better because we lose about 5 to 10 grand a month.
I know exactly why you asked that question.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I really like what you said. What was that, Clint?
I'm not going to sit here. I mean, whenever somebody says, "Oh, I never lose any money," I'm like,
"Yeah, that's not a thing." Yeah. Well, I do like what you said, and I want to point this out for anyone listening. I'm a big philosophy guy, and I'm all about like reading self-help books. But you said something that is a complete game changer in terms of a person's success, not just financially, but just in life. And that is you were like, "Hey, I had this guy. He was supposed to do due diligence," and then you kind of stopped yourself. And it's like, "Nope, it was my fault." And that I think is one of those defining characteristics of somebody who's a whale who can suffer $20,000-$30,000 a month loss and be okay and have the nice wine. And somebody who's just maybe afraid to get off the fence and actually do a deal. And that's because that extreme ownership, game changer. And that's something I preach to a lot to people in general. No, just make it your fault. Take all of it on and just, even with the stuff that's probably not really your fault, it was a little bit him. Screw that. Take it all. It's yours. Own it. That way you're getting all the lessons and you're just better for it for the next thing. And now you're smarter, So
100% agree with you on that one. Yeah. You learn so much by screwing it up.
Yeah. I mean, and that's something I have to remind myself of as we make our way through this journey as real estate investors. Of course, there's just going to be mistakes. And it's just a matter of just like, okay, let's take inventory. What would we do different? Got it. Hindsight's 2020. We could always talk about what we should have did, but it's a waste of time. Let's talk about how we can do that and take those lessons and go into the next deal smarter, better. And literally every deal is just a little sweeter because we're doing that and taking ownership of our mistakes. It's not a property manager. It's not the guy that we hired who ended up stealing money from us. It was us. We should have screened him more. We should have did this. We should have been on site, etc. Right. But that extreme ownership, I think, has been a huge game changer for me just in general, just to kind of circle back to that. So,
yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about this one book that I read, kind of changed my game. I'm going to put it on the camera and let's see if you read this book.
Wow, that's a good looking guy and a pretty cool looking lock.
Hey, is that a model?
I know, dude. He's got a red tie and everything.
Yeah. I think it's AI.
This was one of the first books that I bought, and this was great. I like this one, and I think Toby's got one too. I read that one too. Yeah. This kind of like taught me like how to kind of like structure LLCs. And are you going to do a follow up to that, Clint?
I got one. Next level. Nice. Yeah, next level. Let me see if I got a copy of it.
What? I need to get
Plug
that.
Plug it.
Yeah, I don't have a copy in my office, but yeah, if you'll find it on Amazon.
I'll buy it today.
We'll make sure there's links and descriptions and all that.
Yeah,
so make sure
and you'll see in there, just like I was telling you. I talk about my first book. I would tell people to group properties, and then I tell you my experience and how that changed over time. And went more towards on the lender side as well, on how to structure it to make yourself look better to lenders. Having been down that road where, you don't qualify. Why? Because your tax returns. You're like, damn.
Yeah, man. A lot of the stuff that you talked about in the book really helped me identify and like kind of like solve a lot of problems. Like, I don't think anybody was talking about this when you were talking about like how you would say like 1 to 4 units You might want to buy it on your name, get the regular cheaper financing, Fannie Freddie.
Right.
As soon as you buy it, deed it over to your, LLC, all those things. I mean, we did all of those
That's
things.
our move. Yeah.
Yeah, that's our
Yep.
move. Now, more selfishly, I know we're coming towards the end. I don't want to take like 10 hours of your time. I like to ask some questions related to our business, but it'll be useful for everybody listening because, people, but I'll try to make it as complicated as I can. And because that's our life, right?
That's what he does.
So there's and you can give us like what you would recommend, and then like how, since you have a company, and what you would do if we came to you at this point and be like, bro, we kind of messed up. Like what's going on? That kind of stuff. Right. So right now, how it works is I have a W-2 job, right?
Mhm.
And Drew's got a music school. Now remember, I'm not a CPA or a lawyer, and I'm setting all of these things up for everybody involved. That's how insane what's going on. It's bad. Like I'm sitting at the end of the year doing bookkeeping, taxes, like all kinds of stuff. So I set up an S corporation for Drew. Drew owns it by himself. And then he's taking a small salary. He's doing all of the stuff. He's bringing in money. He's taking 30-40% of his, and then the rest is distributions. Then we have a holding company in Wyoming, right? And that owns 2 LLCs in California, 1 in Tennessee, right? And they're all run by the same Wyoming company.
Mhm.
And then inside the Wyoming is me and him. But instead of me, it's another LLC, and that LLC is owned by my living trust, revocable living trust, and then that owns my property, right? So this madness has been going on, and how we structure the properties is tenants in common. You talk about this a lot. Changed my life, and then I say 50% me, 50% Clint Coons, or whatever LLC you got. I don't care, and then that's how we split every property. Unless we own it by ourselves, then it's just the LLC, right? So this is the kind of like the structure we've been going on. Now, if we come to you and Toby and be like, bro, hook us up, what's going on? How do we move forward? And we intend to buy a few $1 million of real estate moving forward every year.
Well, so again, if you're buying properties together, what's your exit? Is it legacy stuff you're going to keep it, or do you plan to sell it?
Well, my portion of the stuff is already owned by a trust, right? So everything on my side is going into a trust, which is run, if I'm dead, by my sister. So it's already legacy planned. It's going to automatically be in that because it's already in it, right? Because the trust owns the LLC and the LLC owns everything else, kind of. You know what I mean?
No. So the way I look at real estate, I go short-term, mid-term, long-term.
Sure.
Term, under a year. Mid-term, 1 to 5.
Mhm.
Long-term, over 5, typically.
Most of our stuff is 1 to 5, but we
Okay.
do have some plan for legacy.
Then what I would do with all the midterm investments is I would hold those as ticks. And the reason being is that when you have your exit, one of you can decide, hey, I'm going to go buy a Ferrari today. And the other one says, no, I'm going to go buy another piece of property. And so it gives you the ability to do a 1031 exchange on your half. And the other partner can just pay taxes and buy a frivolous item like that. So
they're all ticks right now.
Yeah.
then
all
I
of them.
think
100%.
that's the best way to do it for the way in which you hold your portfolio.
Okay.
What your intended outcomes are. And when you get
For
into
the audience, that's tenants in common. That's the way of owning a property that Clint, I guess, would be the better authority on just
You're right.
describing how that works.
Yeah, just joint ownership. All it is.
Yeah.
Easy.
Anything else on that, or you would do to our structure? Like, what would you, if we came to you, what would we do?
Well, what I mean, do you have TIC agreements that are recorded against the property?
It's a separate copy, but yes, the county, if you go look up the property, it will say 20% our LLC, 20% my sister, whatever that is. But there's a separate document, which is a joint venture agreement I have. And then there's also a TIC agreement, but the county doesn't have these. This is just signed by the parties. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. You typically file a certification of it, but that's important. As long as you have that, because somebody passes away, then you've got a loved one that steps in and they want to make changes. It's important that you have that. But no, that's how I would structure it. And we're doing a lot more TICs now than I have in the past 20 years, I would say. I've probably done more this year alone in the past 6-7 years combined because of the fact that we're seeing a lot more people that are looking more that midterm projection with their investments. And so we're structuring them on those partnership deals to make sure that you can effectively get out of it the way you want to.
Yeah. Okay. So that's good. And what would you say to this is something this is directly comes from my CPAs. They don't like that I have ticks and they say, can you get an LLC for every loser property you have and then create K2s and spend thousands of dollars doing this? So, and I'm like, no, I do not want to do that at all. Hence, I have ticks. So what do you say to those?
I'm not sure why they'd want to K1 it or JV LLC, what the advantage is going to be from their perspective by running that.
The books are tighter with those because now they're relying on my Excel sheets and bookkeeping.
That can be. Yes, I would tend to agree with it from that perspective.
Okay.
But the problem is when you go to sell, I mean, you have to do a drop and swap then in order to set it up so you can sell and still be able to claim 1031 if your partner doesn't want to claim 1031 treatment on it. And that's where it can get complicated, expensive, and possibly cloud title. So, figure out what's more important to you. Having your exit the way you want it, or making it a complicated exit to make the CPA's job a little easier on the front end for your bookkeeper.
Yeah, I like to keep it simple if possible, So, and do you so for like talking about Anderson Business Advisors, that was one of the first conferences that we ever attended and kind of got us hooked on real estate. A great job, and you guys do a great job doing those events and a lot of value. And it's almost like costs you nothing. Like you're an idiot if you don't go to these. It's only a few $100s, and there's it's pretty good. Now, what would it cost for someone listening to kind of do like okay, we want you to take care of all the entities, we want to have unlimited access to you guys. Is it like every time I call you, it's $1,000 an hour? It's kind of like what I pay. So
yeah. So with us, we have what's called our platinum program. Okay. And depending on where you come in at, the basic level, we teach an event where people will set up an LLC for them. We call it our unlimited limited liability company, where you make as many changes as you need to. We provide corporate assistance, so the maintenance of that entity and anonymity, and our platinum program. And it's under $3,000 for all those core services. But to maintain platinum, it's $75 a month. And what that allows you to do is you can call in and you can talk to any of our attorneys and you'll never get charged an hourly rate. And you can even talk to our CPAs. And we have a CPA tax hotline as well. You can call in the tax-related questions. We even review documents. I was in Hawaii teaching an event to real estate investors. All those, not real estate investors, real estate agents with the NAR lawsuits that are going on. Mm-hmm. And my assistant said, hey, this gentleman, he really needs to talk to you, wants to do a review. How much do you want me to quote him? I said, $1,500 for an hour. And the guy wrote back, it's just an hour time. That's ridiculous. I said, it's not an hour time. It's 23 years of experience is what you're getting in an hour. Mm-hmm. And that's why you're paying $1,500. And if you don't appreciate that, well, I'm not going to talk to you. Mm-hmm. When you're a platinum client, those things you're not paying for because it's $75 a month. And you can spend 1 hour or 10 hours talking to us. And you get tremendous value because you're talking to people who understand what it is you're doing. And I think that experience plays through so you don't make the mistakes that a lot of people are prone to make when they talk to someone who doesn't understand asset protection, the tax side, and then the business planning side, the funding, the working with lender side. So all those kind of come together, what we refer to as a three-legged stool approach.
So the platinum is only $3,000 and $75 a month?
Well, the platinum's not even $3,000 because you also get an entity with it. And we set up, and you have our corporate maintenance. So we maintain it and provide you mail forwarding. Because if you're going to set up a Wyoming LLC, you got to have a virtual business address. I tell everyone, any entity you use, you always want a virtual business address, nothing that points back to you. So yeah, that's all included. And that's why we teach those events on Saturdays. Yeah. So that's where, we educate people. And then, if they want to use our services, that's where they start.
But what does it cost to actually, let's say I want to create a new entity? That'll cost you some money, right?
It's going to cost you a couple $1,000 to create a new entity for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then but if you already, so let's say we already have a bunch of entities, and then I just want someone to keep looking at it here and there, and so it'll just cost me $75 to talk to someone every month, and if they want to make adjustments, then you do the hourly rate, or how does that work?
Yeah. Then in that point, if you want to make adjustments, typically what it's going to be is you're going to want to redraft the entire operating agreement, restate it. So we have a service called our Titanium, and that runs around $15K to $18K right in there. And that's unlimited LLCs. So for the client that it keeps needing LLCs to be created in different states, they just call us up and we set it up, and they're only responsible for the actual filing fee itself or redrafting all their entities. It's just one investment, and you're off to the races. So it just really depends on what you're doing and how aggressive you are with your investing, what service makes sense. And so a lot of people end up stepping up, as their investing continues to grow.
Yeah. So is that like a yearly fee or?
No, one time. We don't bill by the hour because we don't want to track time and do that. And no one ever seems to be happy when you receive a bill from an attorney. Like, I didn't talk to you for an hour and 20 minutes. No, we talked for 40 minutes, but then I had to dictate. My secretary did a bunch of work on the back end. So that's why you got billed for it. So we just make it simple, flat fee. And then everyone knows, and hey, here's what your investment is going into it. And then you can calculate out what that return is going to look like for yourself.
And then to just the $75 a month will keep up our entity. So that's a separate service that we need to get, right?
What do you mean? What do you mean by keep up?
Well, you got to manage the minutes. You got to keep filing in check, make sure the fees are paid every year and all those things, maintenance programs.
Yeah. So that's different. So there's two different plans there. If you just want us to be your registered agent, we keep your entity up to date for you. So we just maintain that, or we put it into our system, we track it, and we let you know, hey, and it needs to be renewed. You need a franchise return filed. So anything that the state's going to require, we'll let our clients know. But if they want us to maintain the minutes for that business entity, then that's going to run you, I think it's $795 a year, and it sets one fee that covers all your entities. So it's not a $795 per entity. But so if you had a need for, typically you're going to see this with title or with underwriters. I need a resolution to do X. I need a resolution stating you're authorized to sign on this document. And we draft those for our clients.
That's cool, man. That's awesome, man. Yeah, we might have to talk to your office and figure out something, because it's, as we keep growing, it's getting impossible for me to kind of keep up with the law and stuff, to kind of like get everybody in check. I would love to just offload it once our cash flow is taken care of, and I just pay you guys whatever, $75 and $800 a year, and I'm like, I'm out. Clint's going to take care of that, and I don't want to deal with
high value, low value. Where should your time be spent?
Yep. Yeah. That's awesome.
Here's something else I'll throw at you.
Okay.
We just formed. Are you familiar with Stessa?
Yes. Yeah. I have Stessa, just not the pro one. Yeah.
Yeah, Stessa Pro. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just entered into a relationship with them.
Okay.
And I really like what they have to offer. They're I'm not going to call it fully accounting, but it's really close to that. Took us. I brought in a person just to upload our entire portfolio in there. It took them about 2.5, 3 months to get everything dialed in. But man, it makes it really nice to look at. Your cash flow on a monthly basis and what's profitable and what's not. So I didn't know if you were doing it on spreadsheet or whatnot, but if you're using it, that's great.
Yeah, I kind of just do it for the net worth tracker kind of deal.
Yeah,
I like to see, like 13 properties. We got almost 7 million in loans, worth like 9 some million. It's kind of nice to see, and I keep track of what I've sold and stuff like that.
Yeah,
So cool.
I use it just to sleep at night.
Yeah.
When we take a beating 1 month cash flow, I was like, all right, well, we actually we're making a lot of money. We just don't know it yet.
Yeah. I just don't like looking at things in QuickBooks. Yeah.
What's that, Clint?
I hate looking at stuff in QuickBooks. My bookkeeper sends stuff. You was sending stuff over. I'm like, this makes my head hurt. Can't you make it simpler? No, that's just the way QuickBooks is. And I found Stessa, and I was like, bam.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Any trips planned to Orange County, dude? No.
No trips planned down there in the near future. What we're going to be doing next year, from a in-person event standpoint, we're looking at just doing Vegas and Orlando. We're probably going to do 6 events like that, just back and forth, back and forth.
Clint, we need an excuse to go to Vegas anyway.
Yeah.
Once we close this next deal, so we're celebrating.
I know,
Let's
dude.
go.
Nice. Yeah, it's fun there.
And you guys usually offer some kind of like deals too, right? At the end of your programs, if somebody signs up and stuff. And someone has to come to your events for those, or do you have any? Yeah, you do, right?
Yeah, we do that just to be consistent with what I tell people. If you're taking the time out to be there with us, we're going to reward you for it. And there's so many people say, "Oh, well, here's the deal today," but then you can call in next week and get it, and that's just disingenuous. So we don't operate that way. When the opportunity is there, you take it. Great. If you're not ready for it, well, you can pay for a little. You're going to pay a little more later on, or come back to a different event.
Yeah, man. Because I remember 6 years ago, I think the titanium ran. I might be wrong. Was $10K, and then I think your monthly was $35 or something. Is that accurate?
That is 100% accurate.
Yeah,
he's the numbers guy for a reason.
Yeah, I remember that. See, it actually costed me way more money to not do that with you, and
sure it did.
And it's $600 an hour for me to email my current people, and so like you mentioned, like I think about it, I'm like, if I want to email Lee right now, it's going to cost me about $120 for this response. It's crazy. So I do like that you have that, and people get more and more. I learned this from you, was that you were the first person that I saw online who was willing to educate people for free in order to have an educated client base, which was very new for me, because I was like, why would this guy do this? And then we started doing that. And that's how we raise capital now. We have free events and stuff. People come and we tell them, we are losing so much money running this company, but this is all the stuff. And then some people are like, that's legit. Like, you guys tell everything, the truth. And then those are the people I actually want to be partners with us, because they understand. Is that what you've seen too?
100%. And they're easier clients to work with. That's why we encourage so many potential clients to go through one of the events first, so they have a base understanding. Because if you don't understand it, and we're talking, I'm speaking Greek to you many times, and so then the lift to bring you up from just a pure time standpoint and resources standpoint is much greater than if you came to my event and I educate you on all the core concepts and the whys and the hows. So then you're going into it going, all right, I get that. I know exactly what we're doing. And you're asking for it. Simple things like if I said you need to create a personal property trust for your checking account, you're going to know why that is. Whereas if you haven't been to my event, you don't understand what the benefit is. You don't even know what a personal property trust is. You think it might be a living trust, and it's not any of those things. And then, all right, well, let's talk about it for an hour. And so that's why we like to educate them first.
Yep.
Awesome.
So they understand the value. Well, it's been a big value to us for an hour of your time. Really appreciate everything that we just chatted about. Again, little plug. You guys are watching on YouTube here.
There's a new book too. You said,
new
right?
book. We'll put
Next
it in the
level?
description notes. Next level.
Next level, right? It's called.
Yep.
Yeah.
Awesome. Buy it. Good stuff, man. You're one of the few experts in this field that really knows it in and out. Your team does a great job. The events are awesome. Really inspiring as well, and just super educational. I remember it was like a fire hose, just taking notes. I think I still have the books in a storage bin. I just actually by chance was getting out Christmas decorations. Like, oh, there's all my notes from the Anderson event. Really good stuff. How can people find you, get a hold of you, contact you, all that stuff?
Well, if they want to set up a free strategy session and just have a discussion, no charge. All they have to do is go to aba.link/ANVISS. Just go there. You can schedule a free strategy session. You can find me on YouTube. Just type my name in as well. But I think you should take advantage of it. It's whether you work with us or you do it on your own or you do it with someone else. The thing is that setting it up the right way, knowing the right questions to ask, and then you can, if you're talking to someone, they're saying, "Oh, this is the way you should do it." At least you've got some education, and you can then ask the deeper questions. Because sometimes I ran into somebody this weekend, 12 properties in a corporation, and he wants to pull them out for to refi them. And I said, "You do that, that's a taxable event." Why am I set up this way? Why did my CPA do it? I don't know.
Because he's an idiot. That's the answer. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
No other way to say it. And that's why Clint does what he does. Well, thank you again, everyone. Reach out, get to that link. We'll hyperlink that below in the show notes as well. So, Vince, anything?
That's it, man. Thanks, Clint. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, guys. Fun talking to you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Take care.
I don't know about you, but I definitely like to see 5-star reviews on any service or any product before I purchase. Please take a second to leave us a 5-star review, whether you're listening to it on Apple, iTunes, or Spotify, or whatever platform. Take a second, goes a long way, helps us a lot to grow the channel, and thanks for listening.